Well, U.S. Central Command says that a blockade of Iranian ports is set to begin at 10 o'clock this morning after failed peace talks with Iran over the weekend.
Atlanta News First anchor Gravir Dinza joins us in the studio. Gravir, so the order came from President Donald Trump.
It did, and this blockade is actually a tempered down version of President Trump's original demand. The president Sunday morning called for the entire Strait of Hormuz to be blocked with U.S. military vessels. And now CENTCOM says the blockade of all Iranian ports will be enforced impartially against vessels of all nations, but allow ships traveling from non-Iranian ports to get through. Iran had blocked the strait, limited ship traffic, and has been going through since the fragile ceasefire began. Marine trackers say it's just over 50 compared to 100 to 135 ships that would pass through before the war began. The Trump administration likely intends for the blockade to add pressure to Iran, but it'll also likely cause oil prices to rise even more.
The Iranians using the Strait of Hormuz against the rest of the world, the president, I believe, is doing the right thing, trying to control the straits, possibly in order to open that up for international waters so you can have trade.
You're going to see these energy prices continue at record levels, not for weeks, but months and years. And how blockading the strait gets it open suddenly, I don't get that logic.
Iranian leaders have vowed to counter the blockade, and several top-ranking officials have threatened to retaliate. A former Revolutionary Guard commander wrote on social media that its armed forces has major untouched levers to counter a blockade. And the Iranian parliament speaker responded to President Trump's threat, saying, "If you fight, we'll fight." Rick?
Gravir, thank you. Vice President J.D. Vance led the U.S. delegation during those peace talks with Iran Saturday in Pakistan. The vice president left the Middle East saying that there was no deal after 21 hours of negotiations. President Trump and Vice President Vance both said that Iran's nuclear ambitions were the main reason the talks failed.
We've made very clear what our red lines are, what things we're willing to accommodate them on, and what things we're not willing to accommodate them on. And we've made that as clear as we possibly could, and they have chosen not to accept our terms.
Iranian leaders say the U.S. is overreaching and that the highest level of negotiations since the 1979 Islamic Revolution were inches from a deal, although they did not provide any evidence of that. It's also not known what will happen when the ceasefire expires April 22nd.